In the oral language substrand of the foundational language skills strand, students build listening, speaking, discussion, and presentation skills to become proficient in oral language. In the early elementary grades, oral language skills focus on the social as well as academic communication. Social communication, such as expressing needs and wants, introducing oneself, and conversing politely, are key skills for students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. The development and application of active listening skills is critical at every grade level. Elementary students demonstrate active listening by engaging with the speaker and asking relevant questions to better understand what the speaker is saying. Beginning in middle school, students learn to interpret both verbal and nonverbal messages. And at the high school level, students engage in meaningful discourse with others by adjusting their communication based on the audience and purpose. The oral language substrand also stresses following and giving oral instructions. In the early elementary grades, students learn to restate and follow instructions involving a short sequence of actions. As they progress through the grades, students follow and give gradually more complex, multi-step instructions. In middle school and high school, students follow and give complex oral instructions to perform tasks, answer questions, and solve problems. The oral language substrand also calls on students to work collaboratively with others. Students learn to take part in discussions following agreed-upon rules, such as listening to others, speaking when recognized, and contributing appropriately. Students also offer ideas and constructive feedback, learn to build consensus when working with others, and help move a team toward its goal. Lastly, students in every grade level and course develop and apply public speaking and presentation skills. Students give oral presentations and communicate effectively. They learn key skills such as speaking clearly, employing eye contact, and using an effective speaking rate. Oral language proficiency is a key part of student academic success, and it's essential that students have multiple opportunities to practice and apply oral language skills at all grades. For examples of formative assessment activities in oral language, review the Demonstrated Proficiency section below.
In the Comprehension Skills strand, students develop and deepen the skills necessary to comprehend and think critically about a variety of texts. The goal of this strand is to equip students with skills to understand text, interpret, analyze, and synthesize information about a text, and to monitor and adjust their understanding of what they have read or heard. While the comprehension skills in the TEKS are constant in each grade level, students will develop these skills with increased complexity throughout the year and across grade levels. Students will also apply these skills to increasingly more challenging texts as they become more proficient readers. As readers interact with texts, they are constantly trying to make sense of what they are reading. The skills in this strand allow students to comprehend and process what they have read. As they begin to read a text, students begin constructing meaning by establishing a purpose for reading and asking questions. Students also use text features and their understanding of the genre to make predictions about texts. As they read, students build on their understanding by creating mental images of what they are reading. They also make connections between the text and personal experiences, other texts, in the world around them. Comprehension skills allow students to deepen their understanding of texts. Students do this by evaluating details from the text to identify key ideas. They make inferences and draw conclusions about information or ideas not explicitly stated in the text. Students also synthesize information from text to create a new understanding. Lastly, the comprehension skills strand addresses the skills students need to assess their own understanding of what they have read or heard. Students learn to use strategies to address and overcome specific challenges they may experience in understanding a text. For example, students learn to reread, use annotations, or ask questions when they discover that they do not fully comprehend what they have read. These skills are critical in helping students become proficient readers. The TEKS guide provides more information on the student expectations of the Comprehension skills strand.
The response skills strand focuses on the student's reaction to a piece that is heard, viewed, or read. Students are expected to interact with oral, visual, and/or written works, discuss and write about the works, and use text evidence to demonstrate their understanding. Through the student expectations within the response skills strand, students learn to respond to a variety of sources in many ways, from drawing a picture in response to a text, to retelling or summarizing a text, to writing a composition about a text. A response is an essential way for students to make meaning and demonstrate that they have a deep understanding of the piece they heard, viewed, or read. At every grade level, students make connections between their personal knowledge and experiences and the events, characters, or message in the text. Students also learn to develop increasingly complex written responses to texts. At the lower elementary grades, this might initially take the form of a discussion or drawing and later develop into a brief written response. As students' written responses progress through elementary and middle school, the focus shifts from written responses that demonstrate a clear understanding of the work and later expands to making comparisons across texts and within and among genres. At all grade levels, students will support the responses with evidence from the text. Teachers must ensure that students respond appropriately to increasingly challenging variety of sources. For more detailed information on specific student expectations in the response skills strand, be sure to view the detailed explanations below.
The multiple genres strand focuses on literary elements and characteristics of different genres across a variety of diverse texts. In the literary elements substrand, students learn to recognize and analyze common elements in literary texts, including theme, characterization, plot, and setting. For example, students examine plot development, including rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. The student expectations are progressive, and students are expected to analyze increasingly more advanced aspects of literary elements at each grade level. In the genres substrand, students learn the characteristic structures and purposes of different genres. At every grade level, students read and analyze a variety of literary texts. In elementary, students focus on the characteristics of children's literature, such as folktales and myths. In middle school, students examine various literary genres such as historical fiction. And in high school, students explore world, American, and British literature across literary periods. Students at each grade level also analyze genre characteristics of poetry and drama. Informational text is also addressed at each grade level. Students understand and analyze the central idea or thesis and supporting evidence of informational text, as well as common text features and organizational patterns. Students also examine the characteristics of persuasive and argumentative texts. In kindergarten to grade 2, students explore persuasive text before moving on to argumentative text, beginning in 3rd grade. When reading argumentative text, students identify the intended audience and examine the claim and the facts for and against the argument. Finally, students identify and analyze characteristics of digital and multimodal texts. Digital text is an electronic version of written text with features such as images, hyperlinks, or other interactive elements. A multimodal text integrates 2 or more modes of communication, such as still or moving images, sound, or writing. It's important to remember that students are expected to read and analyze increasingly more complex texts. As students advance, they should have opportunities to engage with text that features more complex content, language, or structure. Learn more about the multiple genres strand by exploring the Alignments tab of the TEKS guide below.
Author's purpose and craft is the fifth strand in the revised Reading Language Arts TEKS. This strand requires a student to think like an author, to understand and create text. Author's purpose refers to a main goal in a piece of writing, such as writing to explain, writing to entertain, writing to express an opinion. For example, students will learn that authors often structure texts intentionally in order to accomplish specific purposes. This understanding will aid students in comprehension of text as well as in the creation of text. Author's craft refers to the choices an author makes in developing the text. Author's craft focuses on the techniques and devices applied by the author in the text, such as imagery, structure, or point of view. It's important to note that this strand does not simply focus on the identification of author's techniques, but also the analysis of why and how these techniques and devices are used to accomplish a specific goal. Students will learn to understand and analyze author's craft to draw conclusions about the reasons for the author's approach. In the author's purpose and craft strand, students will experience the connections between the reading and writing processes. Students experience these connections through the analysis and application of various literary techniques and devices. As they examine various elements of author's craft, such as figurative language or point of view, students will also apply these techniques to their own writing. Through the analysis of author's purpose, students learn how an author's message is tightly aligned to the purpose for writing as well as the audience to or for whom the piece is written. Students engage in this analysis through listening to and reading text and responding to text. Students also produce texts in speaking and writing using these concepts to elevate the quality of the end product. The study of author's purpose and craft is key in helping students think critically about what they read and aiding students to become quality writers. Be sure to review the assessment section below for exemplar assessment items that are aligned to each student expectation in the author's purpose and craft strand.
In the composition strand, students produce written works for specific audiences. The writing process substrand focuses on the stages of developing a written work. Students engage in the writing process, a cycle that guides students to write text for a variety of purposes and audiences. Students follow the stages of the writing process that include pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. Students understand that the process is recursive, meaning that as they move through each stage and refine their work, they may revisit a prior step to improve their written work. In pre-writing, the first stage of the writing process, students generate ideas and plan for a piece of writing. Students might develop ideas by discussing with others, drawing, brainstorming, journaling, or other activities. Students begin developing focused, structured, and coherent written pieces during the drafting stage. Students generate rough drafts and determine how best to organize and present ideas for their intended audience or purpose. In this stage, students develop engaging ideas and reflect a depth of thought by using relevant facts, details, and examples. In the revising stage, the focus is on improving the coherence and clarity of the composition. Students revise by adding, deleting, or rearranging their earlier drafts. As they become more proficient writers, students focus on revising drafts to improve the organization and style of their work. In the editing stage, students correct errors and improve their drafts and edit using standard English conventions. This includes using sentences of increasing complexity and correct use of parts of speech such as adverbs and pronouns. Students also edit using correct capitalization, punctuation, and spelling. Finally, students complete the writing process by publishing their work. Students' written work in the publishing stage reflects a refined, completed draft ready to be shared and enjoyed by the intended audience. Explore the TEKS guide for more information on the writing process substrand.
In the inquiry and research strand, students engage in the processes of inquiry and research by generating questions, seeking answers to those questions, developing and refining research plans, and presenting the results of their research. In this strand, students engage in the recursive or repetitive processes of inquiry and research. In other words, students will continuously return to earlier parts of the process to refine the research question, identify sources to help answer their inquiries, and review and evaluate the information gathered. In the lower elementary grades, students develop questions for formal and informal inquiry with the assistance of adults. As they progress through the grade levels, students learn to generate research questions on their own and clarify their questions to fine-tune the focus of their research. At all grade levels, students learn to develop and refine questions for both informal and formal inquiry. Students learn about the research process and then develop and revise a research plan with adult assistance in the elementary grades and independently in middle and high school that helps to guide their research. Beginning in middle school, students will develop and refine the major research question based on the information they have gathered. At high school, students evaluate or critique their own research process and make adjustments as needed. Students at all grade levels learn to identify and gather information from a variety of sources. They will learn to seek out information to find answers to their research questions. Students also learn to evaluate the sources they find to determine if each source provides information relevant to their questions. In early elementary, this process requires adult assistance, and students gradually identify and gather information on their own. The inquiry and research strand focuses on the importance of using sources ethically. Beginning in elementary school and continuing through high school, students will cite sources and develop a works cited page or bibliography. Students conclude the inquiry and research processes by delivering their findings of their research. For more information on the specific student expectations in the Inquiry and Research strand, view the Overview tab for each student expectation below.